Thank you for joining Consumers First, Contextual Next, sponsored by GumGum. Please welcome Phil Schrader, Chief Executive Officer, GumGum.
Cookies is such a nice word. You know, if it was called like data breach, I'm sure people wouldn't check the box. Sure, I'll accept data breach, yeah.
A cookie is an electronic device planted on your hard drive.
Bits of code that track your movement.
To my knowledge of internet cookies is
it's what websites use to kind of help move your browser move faster.
It might even have eye tracking.
It makes their website work better.
I just know that there's clear cookies on like your like computer or your iPhone. I have no idea what it is at all.
I would describe cookies as a hug from the inside.
I know for targeted ads, they are basically because they track your data.
Almost all of us have willingly surrendered a great deal of private information to the world, whether we like it or not.
We've signed away our life to them because of the fine print.
I think it's weird when you'll be talking about something with your friend.
We were looking for a new vacuum, but we just talked about it.
But then you'll go home and you'll see like an ad.
And they had like a targeted ad for vacuum cleaners.
Then that's scary.
I do feel like I am being stalked by these corporations.
I will buy something and then the next day I will see 100 ads for the exact same thing. Great suggestion! How did you ever come up with that?
I feel a sense of there's no privacy anymore, and that's kind of not okay.
When it comes to using personal data and using cookies and using targeted ads,
Is like secretly taking this and this and this, and it's creepy.
Quit being creepy in my life.
Dial it back.
Enough with the sneaky stuff.
Advertising that isn't tracking my every move, I would feel more comfortable with that.
I really wish there was a way that advertisers could sell to me without spying on me.
You don't need to necessarily be watching and listening all the time.
you don't know the word enough.
I want to be told about your products, but I don't want to be reminded that you're looking into every little detail about me on the internet.
Whether that's a different kind of advertisement that doesn't take your data, I think there's a way to make everyone happy.
It was so great to hear all those different perspectives from so many different consumers. I always find it really fascinating. I think we get wrapped up in the fact that we know our industry so well. Sometimes it's nice just to take a step back and hear really what consumers are actually seeing, hearing, and feeling in our industry. And so I think what this is really telling us is that the consumers today are really all over the place in what's going on with their data and what's happening with how digital advertising is actually reaching them, which is really fascinating. Because as we get buried in our everyday and we're dealing with solutions like the cookie going away, what are we going to do? Or privacy and regulation and governments starting to really crack down on how we're using audience data, we really have to remember that at the real core of this is the consumers are trying to find ways to feel safer online, but yet still be able to get access to the content that they love. I mean, let's think about it. If SpaceX is ready to send a civilian flight to Mars, and the pharma industry has created so many of these amazing COVID vaccines in 1 year, we should be able to create a consumer-centric way to create an amazing experience without using personal or browsing data. And for ourselves to achieve brand safety and watch all of these rules that we've put in place, are they really working, or are they really just harming our brands? Because really fundamentally, we're not really understanding the environment that our users are in. Right now, the solutions that are currently in the industry really are antiquated. We're not looking at all of the context on a page or in a video to make an appropriate decision. We need to use all of the power of AI technologies. So grabbing all of these points into one granular level to understand how we can create and captivate our consumer by these really amazing creatives, by really understanding the content. This is going to tell the consumer we care, we're respecting them. No more of these intrusive ads, no more of these things appearing out of nowhere following them around. Why can't we help a consumer get free, amazing content and also give them advertising they want, engage with, and be creative with? So the future of contextual is what we believe is also going to continue to fuel that creativity. Dynamic ad copy that adjusts itself depending on the surrounding content. Ultimately, we think contextual could help advertisers use content as a proxy for intent. In other words, the content could help us gauge whether the consumer is interested or not. Let's be real. If you're literally looking at relaxation techniques because you've had such a tough week, yes, of course, what makes sense? A spa day option, some skincare products, ways to make you feel good, totally makes sense. But really, do you really want to see a car ad even if you're in the current market for shopping for a car? No. So we think there is everything to play for here in trying to create a system of online ads that actually makes consumers smile rather than grind their teeth. And so we have a panel of experts here who are going to talk through how we can achieve that. Please welcome Stephanie Laser and Allison Schulte.
I think we're just seeing with the governmental regulations, obviously that means consumers are just becoming more aware, because now we're just getting hit a lot more with trying to see what these privacy and cookie, accept cookie kind of descriptions and protocols are that are different for each publisher, right? So I would imagine, Stephanie, for News Corp and different publishers, it's a lot for a consumer to have to keep opting into all of these things, right?
Yeah, and I think that because there isn't a general awareness of what's happening to their data, that no matter how many like cookie banners you put up, there's confusion. What is the functionality of this? Where is my data going? What information do you have? Who has it? Is it third parties? Is it first parties? Is it third parties that act like first parties, like a lot of the big tech companies? And so I think that this is, I think we have reached a point in time where the user experience has to match how the consumer wants to be spoken to and wants to be advertised to. So that is to me kind of the most important takeaway.
Yeah, makes total sense. And so as we think about contextual, I'd love to get both of your perspectives on how it seems both of you see it as obviously, an opportunity that needs to be explored further, right? Especially with everything we have going on. And I think contextual has always been a part of strategy, right? In some form, because we all care about the environments that we're seeing ads in. But now with contextual having a multiple pronged solution option, right? With the privacy, the safety elements and the data, how are you prioritizing it? So, Allison, in an agency where, it's Dentsu, right? And you have all of these moving parts, how do you now prioritize contextual and start to think about integrating that in your roadmap? And what are you at Dentsu doing to take those steps? Because I think any of the agencies or brands, and publishers listening, I think there's a lot of different ways people are managing this, and it'd be really great to hear, what Dentsu's doing along this front.
Sure, absolutely. And it's pretty exciting space for us. I think in some ways, contextual advertising is kind of the oldest kind of targeting that we've had out there. Like go back to, brands running in the radio hours, like well before the internet ever existed, well before TV existed. All you had was contextual. So in some ways, that's something that everyone just kind of gets implicitly. The hard thing was, maybe 10 years ago, trying to sell people and explain the concept of audience targeting. Contextual is back to basics in a funny way. But I think the real opportunity that exists is using the ad tech infrastructure that we've created in terms of being able to buy ads in real time, using machine learning and AI to understand all the minutia of what's happening on a page, and use that to the very old kind of thinking of, hey, a consumer wants to see something relevant for the mindset that they're in. To fast forward my history lesson a little bit, maybe 10 years ago when we were targeting on a contextual basis, it was always just at the domain level and being able to understand by necessity, hey, if someone's on the New York Post, and this is how we use it for a proxy of audience. But I think some of the opportunity that exists now is going a step deeper and being able to really granularly understand at a page level what is and isn't on that page. So we're matching the exact right ad to the right moment as opposed to the right user, which is all to the good. We've done a bunch of testing and development in this area and co-development with you all. I think one of the really surprising things we've seen is where contextual can stack up well alongside audience targeting, and where contextual can also serve as a halo effect on really particular audience targeting.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And then Stephanie, from the publisher's perspective, obviously, News Corp having just, tremendous different types of content under its umbrella, right? And one of the things that we've heard trends-wise are brand suitability, brand safety, and just this inherent missing of opportunities, say, for brands to find that share of voice on really quality content. And so I'm curious, from a contextual standpoint, as you look to integrate more of your own thoughts into how News Corp is going to, look at contextual as part of an additional solution or opportunity, solution to what we're facing, but more as an opportunity for News Corp. How are you thinking about it? How are you integrating it? And what are you doing, on the publisher side to stay right in line with what's going on currently with contextual?
Absolutely. Yeah, so in contextual, contextual is right in the publisher's wheelhouse, right? So it is, we produce the content, we have the underlying metadata, we do analysis on a regular basis for many of our products, even outside of advertising, to help understand our content, what our readers are enjoying, what our readers are liking. So, contextual, it is something that we can use from an advertising perspective, but it's something that we've, heavily invested in on our other tools, our newsroom tools, our news and information tools, things like that. I think one of the things that we found is that there has been a lot of contextual targeting that has been based on keywords, right? And has been based on things that are not necessarily indicative of the of what the content actually means and what is real. And so we're happy that we've been investing in multiple different new contextual solutions that help to get a granular understanding of exactly what's in every piece of content that people are reading. Particularly, the folks over at WSJ Barron's, they have a really amazing product called Thematic that can give you really granular targeting from a business perspective on the Wall Street Journal. So those are just some of the products that we're working on and some of the products that we've brought to market. But, other solutions that are very publisher driven that we've been talking about, especially to prepare for kind of the death of the third-party cookie, is through my role in prebid.org, we've been talking about what it looks like to, push contextual signals out through the bid stream, specifically in the segments portion of OpenRTB protocol. And then the publisher can self-declare that data. They can allow that out into the ecosystem. And if they do that without an ID, that data can't be collected and collated like it could otherwise. But then somebody like Allison could start to purchase on context across multiple different publishers that have all aligned on the same taxonomy. So, we look at it in two ways. We look at it in the very bespoke way. We have more granular insights on our particular data, but then we also look at it in a broader way. How can we enable buyers to buy at scale by aligning on a taxonomy with multiple different publishers?
Yeah, I think you hit something really interesting in what you said, is really that focus on the traditional still keyword, right? You know, literally, I think it was just published, maybe the IB came out with this today, but it was artificial intelligence's use case and best practices for marketing. The IAB just published it, you know, and our CTO at GumGum, you know, wrote up around contextual, and he spends a lot of in that, you know, report really talking about the fact that, you know, machine learning and the technologies that you referenced to understand the content versus just a word is going to be key. And how do you, when you hear things like we're still reliant on keywords, or we're looking at site level or domain level, but we're really not doing anything to look really at detail into sentiment and imagery and all of it as one, like, is it possible to even say there is a brand safe solution out there when you're not looking at all of the content on the page? Like, does that exist, I guess, is my question, right? Because I struggle, because I see, in order for you to tell me this is brand safe, you need to tell me you've seen everything on that page. That's the images and not just the metadata of what someone described, or in the video, understanding the audio. So do we really even have enough suitability or brand safety solutions currently that get us to the baseline of context completely on a web page or a video? Kind of
I think that triangulation is so important for understanding brand suitability. I also think that it's not one size fits all in terms of what any advertiser considers suitable. Like at Dentsu, we've done a lot of research around when someone is uncomfortable with content, when a brand is uncomfortable with content, what is it exactly? And I've done this research more focused around news, but you know, there's kind of a couple of key themes that comes back of what you possibly could be concerned about. You know, one being concerned about disinformation, another being concerned about something like bad news, and a third being concerned about polarizing content. So when you say, hey, this isn't brand safe or this isn't brand suitable, there's a lot of different vectors going on there. And I think it's crucial, you know, instead of having just using keyword, where that's like, you know, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, you can use keyword all day long, having that ability to triangulate and combine, like Stephanie was talking about, publisher signals that help you understand whether something is opinion content versus straight reporting. You know, Phil, as we've talked about, how you can look at all the elements of a page to understand sentiment. It takes all of those different pieces together to answer some of these questions. And it's not easy to do from both an understanding standpoint and then like pulling all the technology pieces together for it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Stephanie?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think that the more signals that you have and the more you can cross-collate them, the better off you are in terms of contextual targeting. I think, you know, one of the things, especially with brand safety, that I've noticed in some of my conversations is that, you know, there are products that are coming to market today that are, you know, about brand sentiment, right? But if you are a brand safety vendor and you're charging less money for keywords to do brand safety versus your sentiment product, people are obviously going to pick the one that is more affordable, especially if they're trying to do it that way. So I would say that if anybody in the audience comes from kind of a brand safety vendor like that and has a business model like that, it's not particularly good for news, especially, right? Because, you know, I think we oftentimes forget that the user doesn't often read a news article. They know that they're reading a news article. They know that they're reading a news article on the Wall Street Journal or on the New York Times or on the Washington Post, right? But they don't relate that particular news article at that point in time to you know, it's a news article about ISIS. Like, is this supporting ISIS? It's not, right? It's not the same as things like user-generated content. It's not the same. So when we start to treat brand safety similarly to the platforms on, premium news publishers or just publishers in general, we start to run ourselves into a situation that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. And then to both your points, the more data signals, the more contextual signals, the more opportunity you have to customize them from the platform or the way that you're engaging, right? Because it'll make sense for different types of content, right? I mean, when we're looking at even different types of editorial content, are we looking at real estate listing pages, or are we looking at an article that I'm reading, right? All of which are very different. So just being able to identify a keyword, on both of those types of two very different pieces of content isn't going to trigger, one, I think, an effective, safe environment. Two, it's probably not going to trigger you with really aligning creative or messaging around specific types of content that would make sense in those two areas. So very, very interesting on that.
And I totally agree. And just wanted to add one point there that I feel super strongly on. In addition to looking at the multiple types of data signals that one has available, the other thing that is just paramount here is having the transparency, both on the buyer side and on the publisher side, on what that feedback is on a per page, per ad basis. Like if you have a data stream that's telling you this is positive, neutral, negative, all right, let's see how that plays out and see how individual pages and content are getting scored, rather than just kind of outsourcing it and trusting a black box, which is something that, in being able to request back the data streams and kind of keep your hand on the rudder in terms of how the targeting is moving, seems more important now than ever.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with that. We've had multiple conversations, particularly about this, and making sure that transparency exists. It's oftentimes really hard for publishers, especially if someone if it's being bought on the open exchange, right? And we get blacklisted, or we get, our particular content gets navigated away from because it's deemed to not fix certain contextual standards. So if we're just getting kind of like broad brush painted across the industry, and we don't actually understand the information that's going into those signals, it's really hard for us to personalize it to our content, because there is a different editorial voice. There is different types of content across the entirety of the open web. And so to try to put a one size fits all approach, it just doesn't work the way that you need it to. So that openness and transparency gives publishers the auditing ability to say, is this really categorizing my content the way that it needs to be categorized? And am I able to serve our advertisers the best way possible through utilizing these products?
Yeah. We couldn't agree more. Obviously, as I think Stephanie, from our side, we are looking at how we, execute and allow GumGum's technology, contextual technology, to be used from the agency side, both on advertisers and the building of creative, creating that suitable and safe environment, and then ultimately align their message with that ideal content. But I think what you're also saying, and I think is really important, Stephanie, is we also view that the API is important. Having API options that you can allow publishers to tap into and test and learn, so that they can start to do exactly that, which would allow them to customize and determine what technologies, what data signals, what might actually help them. We think publishers have a huge opportunity there, because at the end of the day, we're left with a lot of choices being made, depending on who in the agencies or the size of the brand, being made at that programmatic DSP level. And when that happens, I think as an industry, if we only have keyword, or we only have your lowest cost option, as you mentioned, Stephanie, that's where people are going to go. But I think we would all agree that if us as an industry, regardless, if we haven't integrated a new contextual partner in a DSP for the last 5 years, we probably have some work to do here, because we've been prioritizing audience. And contextual, like you said, Allison, has been something that has been around since the inception of advertising. So I think more contextual validated, and transparent with methodologies and benchmarks and testing is where we need to look at, right? And I think that that's really key from my perspective. It sounds like you both share that. I do want to make sure we get the questions. There's a few questions that have come in from the audience. So from Greg Morrow, Allison, how might Contextual use news publishers to create new inventory that is valuable while keeping them away from the types of news that some advertisers are not comfortable being around? So I think getting to that suitability, is there methods? How do you see that actually being executed against?
Yeah, that's a great question, and exactly what we were working on with the Fourth State Initiative, where it's really a question, like I was mentioning earlier, in terms of understanding specifically from an advertiser what the comfort levels and the concerns are around news. Like, is it a question of concern around disinformation versus verified news? Is it a question of looking at bad or negative news, or is it a question of looking at something like not polarizing news, and then really customizing the toolkit accordingly? Essentially, we look at something that combines sentiment with signals from the publisher, with just having an overall kind of safe playground of news that's free from disinformation, and then customizing within those confines, having, again, the multiple vectors that you can customize a program on to be very specific about the need, rather than just saying like, news is harder than other content, so like, let's just stick with gardening, which
Right.
Nothing against gardening. Yeah.
I probably need all the content on gardening. I'm not a good gardener. Don't send me a plan. Great question. Thank you, Greg. Greg has a follow-up question on that too. I think what's an interesting question around contextual insights on video. So for example, again, at GumGum, right, for us, we view that you need to be able to provide the contextual data around all pieces of content, even when we're looking at video, whether that be web. Like, our technology works on OTT, CTV inventory, right? Because it has to look at images, the audio, and then all of that content. But with that, it's an element to help support the proper targeting, the suitability, the safety, and the alignment. But what about insights? What about contextual insights? And how are you looking at the contextual insights from video, say, as Greg asks? And what type of data are you trying to glean from that? I'd be curious from both of you, if you're getting these questions from your advertisers, that curious as to how you would be looking at video insights overall. I don't know if Allison or Stephanie you want to take, or maybe you're not hearing it yet, but it's something coming, because everyone's in the OTT space, right? It's like everyone's there. We believe, well, yeah, everyone wants to get there now because that's where eyeballs are, but that's going to be a very short life cycle. And now you're going to want to have contextually relevant targeted ads really well placed within that inventory. Otherwise, we're just recreating a wheel that we knew has evolved from linear that isn't really creating immersive experiences. So are you getting those types of questions, the insights, the video, how contextual is applying, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a really smart question. And actually, I was just got a question from it internally this morning. And I think one of the keys to look at here is when a vendor says that they have the ability to do video-based contextual buying, pushing a little step further to say what exactly is being analyzed. Because like the easy thing to do is look at metadata tags and just say, hey, this person tagged this content as gardening. Like, great, it's gardening, done. But the more important work, I think, and going a step further is, all right, are they actually doing the work to pull down the content, analyze the images, get all the text, and make the decision themselves? Or is it just a function of a creator tagged this thing as gardening, so it's gardening? Right. And that's the really important piece to one of the really important pieces to be aware of there.
And I think you're hitting a nail on the head, no pun intended to your earlier reference, but it does seem very important that we ask the transparency questions around what limitations each technology currently have, which isn't bad. That doesn't mean they're not evolving, right? You just have to be transparent so that everyone knows, so you know how to build off of it. Stephanie, do you have a thought on that? Just video overall, video content, video insights, contextually, are you hearing, are you thinking about it? Are you providing more to advertisers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely agree with what Allison was getting at, that, while evaluating these different solutions, you have to know exactly, how they are contextualizing particular content at any point in time. I think this is an opportunity space, right? For video. I think that this is something that's still pretty in its infancy, or is not as developed as some of the text-based buying at this point in time. So we will be seeing, I think, a lot of innovation in this particular area over the next few years.
Great, super helpful. So do you think, just overall, I guess, kind of to wrap up, like one really pointed question, Allison, from the agency's perspective, and then also, obviously from the publisher's perspective, do you think it's going to be critical for an agency to have a differentiated contextual strategy when representing their brand clients or in seeking new business from brands?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why the transparency and the customization of the contextual assets is so crucial, because every agency has a slightly different flavor in terms of how they go to market, what the products and services are. And contextual, honestly, I think can be fit to match with every go-to-market strategy, and it's really a question of getting those building blocks and the transparency of the data assets, so that again you can create something like that halo effect of, here's what my initial strategy is, and then here's the places where I've got the building blocks to expand out a program on a contextual nature.
Yeah. And Stephanie, you feel the same? Like, you feel like you at News Corp have to be able to address to brands and working with them about what you're doing in contextual, and are you leaning into it as a proactive strategy?
Yeah.
How do you think about it? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is one of the areas in which publishers have the most opportunity, because, like I said before, this is an area that we know. It's an area that we're well versed in. It's an area that touches everything, even outside of advertising.
Right.
So a lot of that can really be unique insights. So a lot of our products and a lot of the things we're talking about and working on today have to do with contextual advertising.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, as we start to wrap up here, we have a few minutes left. One of the things, I know we talked about this when I go to different sessions too, it's like sometimes there's just so much great information, or you hear all these little sound bites. And so we thought it would be great to do a key takeaways, slide, and just kind of recap some of the things. So if you are, watching right now, you might want to screenshot this or grab it as we put it on the screen. I can't see it yet, so I don't know if it's there yet, but it should pop up soon, because we'd like to walk through what are those, key takeaways. So, Allison, I don't know if the slide is on or not, but do you have those few key takeaways you'd like to, share with everyone?
Sure, absolutely. I think the first one is understanding your contextual data and the insights that you get there, and not just saying, all right, if someone told me this is X kind of content, if someone told me that this is positive content, then I will take that at face value, but really digging a little bit further to understand the why. Why do you think this? And then the proof of, okay, show me the pages and show me what you thought about those pages.
Right.
Second, so crucial, especially this year, is making those opportunities to test new technologies. With the demise of the third-party cookie, as I feel like for a panel talking about contextual, like we barely talked about the demise of the third-party cookie in this session, which is amazing.
Right, because I think we all know that it's happening. It's now really like, how do we start action?
Granted, that's happening. Let's move on. But finding that opportunity to test new technologies, like, you know, in an apples to apples way, because, you know, one of those sets of apples is going away in a year. So this is a good moment to be testing that. And the third piece is just working with your partners on providing those innovative solutions and figuring out how to customize uniquely for your own need. It seems like this point of inflection point in terms of how we do our targeting creates a lot of opportunity if you can set up your conversations to focus on your client's needs and have empathy for both that end user, like we were talking about in the beginning, but then also the client needs and building the balance that way.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you. Stephanie, your moment of take these three things from the publisher's perspective, and what are those?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So from a publisher's perspective, I would say that, you know, stay close to a lot of the solutions that are being talked about, specifically the ID list solutions that are coming out of Prebid, because a lot of those align to contextual signals, and you can be able to buy at scale. I would also say that you know, look at your favorite partners that are out there and see what contextual solutions that they have that are good fits and are custom to their particular content, because that changes depending on the publisher, and right. A one size fits all approach is not necessarily the thing we want or need. I would say that those are probably my two biggest takeaways.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. Mine obviously are, I think, contextual. You need to know all of the foundation of all the elements of an environment. So that would be one for me, definitely. I do think contextual is in its infancy. I think we kind of put it on the back burner, right? While we really focused on audience. There was huge investment there. And I think it's now coming into the center stage again. And I think we would be remiss as an industry not to aggressively, you know, embrace that and understand that those contextual data sessions are data points can be so valuable to us. And, you know, remember the privacy of the consumer is paramount. I think we need to remember ourselves as just consumers first. And let's, you know, remind ourselves of that. And we can really create amazing ways that context, I think, can deliver effective advertising that all of us want to engage with and still meet all of our brands, our agencies, our publishers, and all of our partners' objectives throughout that as well. So thank you all so much for taking the time and sticking with us. Thank you so much, Allison and Stephanie. Really appreciate it, and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the conference. Take care.